And these are the results from the numerical modeling tool for drilling induced tensile fractures at different regimes. Unlike for Wellbore breakouts, this is the required mud pressure. For Wellbore breakouts, this was what? It was UCS, required UCS. And again, the color code has been switched so that blue is the high value. So what this is telling you is that in order to avoid forming drilling-induced tensile fractures, you will need to drill with a mud pressure that's about a little over 65 if you're going to be drilling in this direction. Whereas if you drill in this direction, I'm going to change the color here. If you drill in this direction, well, you only need about 35 megapascals of mud pressure to create drilling-induced tensile fractures. So if you want to create drilling-induced tensile fractures with low mud pressure, then you drill wells with this deviation, right, which is northeast about 70-80 degrees azimuth. So it's in that direction and it's dipping about 70 degrees too, right? This is 30, this is 60, and this is between 60 and 90. And the same interpretation works for these, right? For the other stress regimes. Here, you will need to drill almost horizontal wells. Now this is blue, right? So if you want low mud pressure, then you'll need to drill vertical wells, right? Here, to get drilling-induced tensile fractures at low mud pressures, well, you will need to drill wells in this region or with that deviation. So that's how we interpret this. And again, all of this comes from a tool. It's a numerical modeling tool. Why is it important? Because wellbore stability is actually a very serious problem in the industry. It costs us a lot of money, between 1 and 6 billion per year worldwide. And most of these problems are due to mechanical instabilities. Mechanical modeling can help solve those problems, right? These mechanical instabilities are a consequence of stresses around the well. So stress concentrations around the well, when they exceed the rock strength in any direction around the well, then you have wellbore failure, right? That could be breakouts. And if that's not properly controlled, it can lead to serious drilling issues. And you don't necessarily have to have that problem in the reservoir of interest, right? You need to drill through several formations before you get to the interval of interest, and you can have those problems when you have rocks that are not very strong above your reservoir. So being able to mitigate these problems requires ability to accurately determine the stress magnitudes in the subsurface and also the rock strength, because when the stresses concentrated anywhere around the wellbore exceeds the rock strength there, then the rock around that region fails, and that could lead to drill cuttings, right? As you're getting more wellbore breakouts, the rock mass that breaks into the wellbore needs to be circulated out, and when you have lots of those, it could give rise to excess cuttings, right? And that could lead to hydraulic problems. You have too many cuttings, it can lead to stuck pipes, right? During drilling, wellbore enlargements due to compressive failure contribute to hole collapse. So if the wellbore breakout angle is so large, right, then you will have a general enlargement of the wellbore, and that could lead to serious drilling issues. And you're going to see that on the next slide. Having to drill with excessive mud pressure can also lead to lost circulation problems, right? Because if your mud pressure exceeds the least principal stress, then you can actually propagate a fracture into the formation, and you will lose your drilling fluids. Eventually, you can lose the mud pressure because of the loss of the hydraulic column, hydraulic pressure, and that could cause kicks and eventually blowouts. If you use excessive mud weight, you can also have increased exposure times, and that's what can lead to washouts, right? Because the fluid keeps jetting against the formation while you are at the same depth, and the hole enlarges, and that could give you serious completions and drilling problems. When you have increased exposure times, well, the formation fluid, the drilling fluid leaks into the formation, and that can lead to formation damage, right? Because it basically blocks the pores right by the well sand face, and that will reduce productivity when you eventually bring the well to production. Increased exposure times means you're not drilling the well as fast as you would like to, and that will lead to increased well costs, right? Because they charge per day to drill the well. So if you're drilling a well for 6 months instead of 2 months, it incurs cost. And this really emphasizes the importance of mechanical earth modeling and geomechanical simulations, right? Because you can evaluate all of the potential drilling problems. You can figure out the best orientation to drill your well to avoid these drilling problems, and that will avoid these exorbitant costs. And that's the whole purpose in this course, right? Because keep in mind, the most important things controlling this process, as we saw in this bullet, was stress magnitudes, rock strength, both of which are MEM components. So part of the objectives in our MEM or mechanical earth modeling. During the life of the well, meaning after you've drilled it successfully, due to depletion and the pressure drawdowns, you can have sand production, and that typically happens when you produce at very high flow rates. So fine sands begin to flow together with the fluid, and that could damage the well. It could lead to collapse of the well. Depletion can also lead to collapse of your well, right? You deplete it and the effective stresses build up, and these are compressive. They apply too much stress on the wellbore. Well, the wellbore can collapse, the casing can get damaged, and that could lead to both the loss of the revenue you would have made from the well, but it can also give rise to environmental problems, right? The oil can move up, the oil gas can move up and contaminate aquifers and other layers that contain water above the interval where the oil is coming from. So this is the key to preventing wellbore instability issues. It basically involves controlling the wellbore breakout width, which we talked about. So to avoid wellbore instability due to wellbore breakouts, that wellbore breakout width has to be less than 90 degrees, like you see here. So because the angle doesn't necessarily increase with time, it only gets deeper like shown here, you will still be able to drill your well successfully. Granted, you will produce more cuttings from this region, but with well circulation, you'll be fine. And that will give you a stable well, even when you have breakouts. But if the angle is greater than 90, again, previously it was less than 90. If the wellbore breakout width is now greater than 90, you will see it's very easy for that to lead to a general expansion in the hole size. And now it's difficult to keep the pipe in the hole without getting stuck. And that could lead to serious drilling problems. And that would be the unstable well. So you just need to be able to keep the wellbore breakout to less than 90. And you will see that even though it has to be less than 90, we like to keep it less than 30 to stay clear of problems. And that's the typical practice. And for that reason, we've regenerated the same figure we had before, but now the wellbore the breakout width has been set to be equal to 30 degrees instead of 45 like before. So now this is the mod weight you will need to be able to get the breakout width at 30 or less, right? So you will need to drill the regions in blue with a pressure of about 31 in this direction to prevent initiation of wellbore breakout. And that's a very important point. All of this analysis is the initiation of the breakout, right? It doesn't deal with how the breakout propagates deeper into the formation. But if you don't initiate the wellbore breakout in the first place, then you wouldn't have the problem of propagation. So that's the real importance of this. And the interpretation of these other orientations are as discussed before, right? So you want to drill in this direction if you're going to keep your mod weight at this value or less. And that will ensure even when you initiate breakouts, they will be at 30 degrees or less.